Hi everyone, I'm Valérie, MATERFAD Manager and Deputy Director of FAD, Fostering Art and Design. FAD promotes best in innovative and sustainable practices in the fields of design and advanced materials. The Neomateria exhibition, organized by MATERFAD and the Trade, Crafts and Fashion Consortium of the Catalan government, is actually traveling through 3 Korean cities, thanks to the support of Korea Institute of Design Promotion. Within this framework, MATERFAD organized 3 roundtables where Catalan and Korean artisans designers dialogue about new advanced materials for crafts and design. This is the 3rd one and the last one. All Neomateria roundtables are available on MATERFAD YouTube channel. I'm glad to welcome you this morning and to introduce Robert Thompson, Scientific Director of MATERFAD, and moderator of this session. And of course, I'm glad to welcome our speakers too, Surzhana Radnaeva and Ryu Jong Dae. I hope you will enjoy. Thank you.
Hi to everyone, and of course, welcome to this 3rd series of the roundtables. We are broadcasting across the world in 2 different time zones, and I appreciate your presence here online. My name is Robert Thompson. I'm the Scientific Director here at MATERFAD in Barcelona. We are a materials library and research center who are dedicated to studying materials and fostering innovation through the qualitative and quantitative approach to materials. I have the great pleasure today to welcome 2 prominent designers in diverse fields of design and innovation. On the one hand, I have Ryu Jong Dae. Ryu, he's a South Korean designer. He's considered a modern designer. He's well known for his wooden concept art dedicated into the furniture industry. But lately, he's been focused more on terms of environmentally friendly techniques and especially environmentally friendly materials. In fact, his digital craft series is a project which is the integration of what is known as biological polymers, otherwise known as polylactic acids, and diverse 3D printing techniques. With us today here, we also have Surzhana Radnaeva. She is a fashion designer from Siberia. She has dedicated most of her life towards the study of design. In fact, in Moscow, she studied theory and semiotics of art. She's also a student of fashion design and worked in Beijing for several years. She is contacting us by this webinar through Marseille in France. And she is now dedicating her expertise towards traditional craftsmanship and biomaterials, and in the hopes of developing traditional futures. Now, the topic of today is an interesting one. It involves the dichotomy between what was considered organic and what is considered robotic. Now, in a larger point of view, we can see this as a history, whereas the arts and crafts started using biological materials and using craftsmanship types of techniques. However, after the 1900s, mankind had a turning point where new technologies had been available and adapted, especially in the Industrial Revolution, where machinery had replaced the long and tedious artistic approach towards making things, objects of value. But nowadays, we're living in an era of revolution, an era where the digital space, the robotic space, and the creative space all merge together. And not only is this revolution in terms of the machinery and the ideas, but also the ways that materials have manifested themselves through advanced chemistry. In fact, today, the advent of biological materials is not only something desirable, but it's almost something that we need. We need to create using biology, maybe using biological systems, and above all, following cycles of biological growth and decay. So we will be talking and looking at these different projects that these wonderful designers have proposed for us today. And perhaps maybe I can start with you, Ryu. I was looking at your artwork, and I'm wondering if you could kind of enlighten the audience about what it is that exactly you do and perhaps why.
About my project, my work. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. In these days, actually, I have been working on the furniture design through the woodworking techniques such as bending techniques and sculpture, and others. So in these days, I focus on the find out new material such as bioplastic, extract from cornstarch, and new techniques such as 3D printing and 3D scanner. They make it new design concept. Sustainable design is available and reduce waste, and it doesn't make unnecessary material. So I think these days designers have to interest in make some valuable project such as sustainable design. So I use biological material and digital technologies such as 3D printing. That's all.
That certainly is interesting. The idea, one of the interesting things that I've always appreciated about the 3D printing process is really a lot of the investment is upfront, right? You have to build this machine, but once you have this machine, you can build objects that you normally cannot build in a traditional setting, like using molds and things of that sort. And also this idea that you don't have any, or you have very, very little waste material. Was that one of the things that attracted you in terms of the digital printing scene?
So, pardon, once again?
Yeah, was the fact that you generate very little residue or residual material something that attracted you to the 3D printing technique?
So, I think there are some advantages if I use 3D printing. Depending on how I design some shapes, I can reduce unnecessary material. So that point is the important things to use the techniques to reduce waste and doesn't use unnecessary material.
So how do you create? Like, do you create in the mind space and then you make a model in a computer, or do you work more chaotically? Like, is your process, what is your process like?
Yeah. Once I design my idea in my head, and then I 3D modeling with Rhino 3D or ZBrush, and then I change the digital files to another program, which is make some G code. So, and then I will use 3D printer by the G code, and then 3D printing, and then modification, and 3D printing and modification, 3D printing and modification. That is process. It's not easy. It's not easy. Digital craft is not easy. I think digital technology is not perfect techniques like media. Media is promote that digital technology is perfect, but if you use the technologies, you realize that it's not perfect. Always have to focus on and change and change, try and try. Yeah, so that's why I use the techniques as a new tool. So digital technology is just a tool in modern.
That's very interesting. I love that comment. In fact, I agree with you. The promise of the 3D printing is great, but the difficulties are different, perhaps, right? You have other difficulties that someone who makes things by hand probably doesn't have, because their working process is always a process. And so they grow slowly with whatever they're making. And so you're saying basically that the 3D printing might be precise, but you need to make many tests of the same part. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, always I have to do a lot of tests when I'm use the 3D printer with biological materials. So always I'm mind control when I design and work with 3D printer.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love that, because one thing about the biological materials, and I want to kind of tie into this with Surzhana, because I know, Surzhana, we kind of go back some time. I've known Surzhana now for a couple of years, and she's been a pioneer basically in the fashion industry to try to look for new materials, new biology, new structure. And it's difficult to work with biological materials because of the fact that they are biological and that they have a lot of imperfections also at a molecular level, depending on how it's processed. Now, Surzhana, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about your process of creativity, because I've been able to appreciate some of your pieces. Would you like to expand on that?
Hello, Robert. Thank you for inviting me to this roundtable, and I thank Valerie as well and the whole team of MATERFAD. So working with biomaterials, it's almost at the same time, I feel like it's a new thing for me and the old thing for me, because since my early childhood, I would be surrounded by different textures and materials while living in the steppes. And right now, all these biomaterials are quite innovative, and as you said, they have some imperfections. But we have to find the way as a challenge, and to sometimes turn the issues of the material as an advantage. So I don't know if I answered your question. I'm not sure.
Yes, actually, you did answer my question. In fact, it brings about other questions, which is how do you deal with the challenges that these natural materials impose? I mean, do you try to solve them, or do you go with the flow?
Of course, we try to solve them. I say we because I never work alone. First of all, because I'm not a material maker. I work with materials. I know how to make some of them, at least theoretically, and some practically. But I prefer to work with experts of materials that usually work just with one material. This way it can improve better. And so we as a team, we try to solve the problems, but at the meantime, while it's not solved, I try to find the advantage of it. For example, I give an example. Is a famous kombucha material that is getting more and more popular right now. It's a dream material. It's very beautiful aesthetically, and but it's not wearable right now. I wish to make garments that are wearable and try to sell them. That's the way to change the world. If people on the streets you see and they are wearing kombucha leather coats, jackets. But right now at this stage, it is not 100% possible. There are some ways, but they're not very sustainable, I would say. So I'm going to say about the Regrow project. It was the part of a Reshape competition, where we applied as a team with Threads Media Lab that is based in Paris. They made a kombucha leather, and we applied with a project of garment for burned skin issues. So here, as kombucha, not waterproof, but it absorbs very well humidity and water, and you can also embed different. You can inject different, for example, medicaments or as aromatherapy, things like that. And it also stays humid pretty long time. So that's why we made a project of how it actually could use the kombucha leather to be a treatment for the burned skin, because the burned skin needs humidity, and you can also embed different medicine. And the third part was aesthetical part, because there is a clinical research on that, how patients with any kind of health issues, when they feel beautiful, they recover faster. Like, anyway, yeah, like all of us, we all feel better when when we look good. So that's one of the examples. I could continue with each material, but it will take all the whole time.
Well, kombucha is a good example of a grown material as we know it. And for the public that is listening, kombucha is a fermented bacterial type of leather that is waterborne, and so it can be grown in a solution of water with sugar. Now, however, other materials that are grown are PLA, and I know that Ryu, you use PLA, which is polylactic acid, and that comes from corn. And so there's similarities between these, because both of them are grown, both of them are glucose based or sugar based, and both of them have difficulties. Like the kombucha is hard to wear, it attracts water, and PLA also has some of these weaknesses. Now, have you found this to be the case for you, Ryu? The PLA, what kind of performance does that deliver?
Of course, I use the PLA when I design some small items, cups, bases, and others. In these days, I tried a new challenge to make some more bigger project, such as stools and cabinets and other furnitures, bigger size. When I designed the bigger size furniture, I have to make some new idea on the structure. I have to concentrate on structure. If I use the PLA, I can make a more bigger size design. Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that, because in fact, that's one of the things that designers and engineers have to understand, is that when they change the materials, the actual ingredients of the materials, they have to change the design. a lot of times, like to be able to support the weight, or to be able to last, or in the case of Surzhana, the way that the clothes maybe fits on the body, how it bends and things like that. And that's definitely a double challenge, in my opinion, right? It's how do we design garments or furniture or tools that can give good performances using materials that we don't have that much control over, because they're grown and they have their imperfections. I'm wondering, how do you overcome that issue?
The question for me?
Yeah, for you, or
Oh, yeah.
for Surzhana.
It's not good condition to internet. So
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Actually, you know that PLA is not is weakness. It's not strong. So when I design some things by 3D printing and PLA, I design some more structure, unique structure. One and
Yeah.
stiffener, or some special shapes. Yeah. Double structure. Yeah. If you see the detailed cases when I'm doing my presentation. Yeah.
So you use a vocabulary of different shapes to try to see if the shape has some kind of inherent structure in it.
Yeah.
That makes it more resistant, right? Or makes it, do you over-engineer your pieces? Like, do you make them thicker than usual? Is that something that you do, or?
Sometimes I use the structure, and sometimes I use joint. Sometimes I use the shape, special shape, joint, and structure. There are some solutions when I design using the techniques and material.
Yeah, because usually what I find is when you change the material and you change the design, sometimes there's new opportunities for innovation. Like the example of kombucha. I don't know, Surzhana, have you ever tried to use heat as a way to join the pieces of kombucha, or do you stick more to the traditional forms of sewing and fastening and gluing and things of this sort? We can't hear you.
I can hear you.
I'm sorry. Actually, I use more of a traditional way, because I think it's already quite innovative to use new materials. So I try to stick to a traditional way as much as possible. Never tried it.
Right. Also because kombucha has a certain amount of flexibility, right? So that could be a good thing and a bad thing, of course, in terms of use. But it also is a material that has some thermal reactivity. So you could try, 3D printing on kombucha. I don't know if kombucha could be 3D printed. That's an interesting aspect, because if it could be 3D printed in some way, then maybe we can make mixtures of materials like PLA and kombucha together. Could be an interesting new material. I say this because oftentimes polylactic acid can be quite rigid, and the reason why it is rigid is because mainly in 3D printing we don't use that many plasticizers, but kombucha is a plasticizer. And so I think adding small amounts of kombucha to a PLA mixture could actually make something a little more flexible. Would that be possible, do you think, Ryu, to have two materials in one?
That's an interesting idea. I try it. I want to try
You
it.
probably
Yeah.
should. Yes. What kind of machine do you use? Is it an FDM? Is it a FDM machine, or?
Yeah, I have some 3D printer, small FDM, bigger FDM, extra bigger FDM, and SLA. I have SLA type 3D printer as well. Yeah. So I
Wow,
use SLA. Yeah. Mainly I use FDM 3D printer because I try to make some bigger project in these days.
I was going to ask you about that. What about the scale? Like, what kind of scales can you work in?
From small and to from small size to 430 millimeter, 430 millimeter, 430 millimeter, height,
Yes.
470 millimeter, one time.
Aha, okay, I got it. So you have to build things. You have to kind of build them up afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah. If I need some more bigger project, I used to design assembly. So
Right.
assembly.
Sure.
Yeah, I can make it so big size project.
That's interesting because we could tie that into the what we were mentioning earlier, because kombucha can be used as a glue. So there is the possibility of joining components using kombucha in between as a kind of a meniscus, you know, so that we have joints that are slightly movable, but at the same time are biological. And so this is an attractive factor. And I'm wondering, like, Surzhana, could you go into like the aesthetics? Because the aesthetics is something that is extremely important in fashion, right? The idea of textures and the idea of some of the other aspects of the semiotic aspects, like, you know, smell and the feel and the temperature. Like, what kind of challenges have you found in this working with biological materials?
I would say that all these features of different biomaterials, that they have their own smell, that they have their own texture, I find it very beautiful, because like all of us, we have our smell, we have our texture, and I find it as a normal being, like living being. And we need to appreciate their smell as well and their texture. For example, I worked with a fish leather, and some people might feel, oh, it smells like fish. It's not nice. While many people wear leather, for example, from different animals as well, like cow leather, like all kind of different leather, and it has a smell as well. It's just a matter of education, I think, and getting used to. It's just a part of it. It's nature.
So do you see this as a form of luxury, perhaps? Like, how could you go into the idea of luxury with biological materials? Can we relearn our values?
Of course, we can relearn, as we already learned about leather, for example, and yes, we can do it, as now it's the world of storytelling as well. People lack stories and connection with different objects. So the story behind, and which is the real story behind all these biomaterials, I find it, as you said, a luxury.
So is the luxury, can the luxury be embedded into the system? Okay, so what do I mean by that? You're saying, Surzhana, you're saying the storytelling, right? It's different to have a part or a jacket or a shirt that's been crafted by hand by someone somewhere using local materials. On the other hand, we have the 3D printing process, which is, it's not so personal. It's more technological, and the values are probably more based into the precision and the ideas that you can repeat, and the ideas that, you know, there's no residue of a material. How do you think, and this is a question for either one of you, how do you think we can communicate our objects to the public so that they understand the value?
As Materia Bruta project is actually about that. It's first of all, Materia Bruta project is part of my brand Traditional Futures, which is about modernizing traditional costumes. And the modernization of traditional costumes is using traditional some of the traditional aspects, and at the same time using some innovative. It could be a digital techniques. As we all live now in digital time, it's not possible to wear this colorful, rich silk traditional costume like we have in Buryatia, where I'm from. And that's why I started to work on this issue to modernize traditional costumes. And I have one garment which was a costume made with leather from microorganism as mycelium. And that's the way to modernize it. I'm not sure if I replied your answer. I'm sorry.
I lost you a little bit in the connection. I couldn't hear you too well. You were mentioning something about mycelium. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what kind of experience did you have with the mycelium? Did it respond to what you wanted it to do, or did it do its own thing?
I found it. It did its own thing. But first of all, it's a very alien looking like a material. So for me, this symbiosis of two, of tradition and mycelium, which we can say it's a new material, but at the same time, it's been there all the time. We didn't see it, or we didn't know how to use it. So I like this kind of contrast and a little bit of crazy or alien mixes.
That's it. That's a good point. I'm a designer myself, and I've always kind of battled with this idea of how much control do we want over our objects. And so one of the reasons why I find it so interesting to talk to both of you is because you represent different spectrums of control and different spectrums of creativity, which are somehow opposing in some way. You know, like I'm sure, Ryu, when you are designing in your head, you're imagining and you're having control over your ideas, and you're imagining something because you know that the 3D printing process could probably make that. But once that machine starts printing, you lose all the creative part of that. And I'm wondering, does that affect you, or do you think that's something that is inevitable?
Sometimes I think the digital technologies using the biological materials sometimes it's very special design idea. Sometimes it's not perfect tools. So in these days, how I have to this design have to go on or not. So or I have to find out new material, biological new material. So I think it's just a tool of design, one of kind of design tools, 3D printing techniques, and yeah.
So when you're 3D printing, I see that some of your pieces have color.
Yeah.
How do you apply that color? Is it in the actual PLA, or is it a post process that you use?
I mainly use the various colors, the PLA from the factory. Sometimes I try the color that I want. I can choose some options. One of them is I can try that colors using the Pantone color chips sent to the factory. The factory make the colors that I want, send me the PLA. The other option is that I use some some color materials mixing PLA and then make the rolls, and then I use the PLA that colors I want. So I can use two options.
So you have different ways of mixing these things. Well, it's funny because PLA is actually a very good material substrate to grow mycelium. So that's something you could actually try in terms of your experimentation. Is you can design things that have containers where you can put inside mycelium, and then you can watch this kind of 3D printing from a biological standpoint, which grows onto your normal 3D printing process. And that could be something very useful also for the life cycle of PLA, because PLA is a biodegradable material, but you do need it to be in certain chemical and environmental conditions for it to biodegrade. And it could be a solution to integrate different materials that are biological. And I'm sure, Surzhana, you've experimented this before. In fact, I remember seeing a piece of yours that had this kind of gelatinous structure, and then it had carbon. I think it had carbon in it, right? And so carbon is an interesting material for this. Do you find that there could be interactions between biological materials that are useful?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
My question is, do you think we can mix biological materials to obtain other properties that we don't obtain by one only material?
Yes, I'm sure that it is possible, and it is a good way to do it, to keep it biodegradable, to not use plastics or plastifiers. It would be great to mix different biomaterials. Yes, for example, one of the pieces that we worked on for the Wars Partnership Project with Anastasia Pistofidou, that was an alginate material that was mixed with wool. Hello?
I apologize. I think we're having some connective problems with the internet.
Oh. Hello? I don't hear you.
Hello?
Hello? I don't know if you can
I can
hear
hear
me.
you. Yeah.
I don't hear Robert.
There's some problem, connection.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. The connection is not very good. Sorry about that.
No, don't
So,
worry.
so I'm wondering if you could give some recommendations to designers of today. Surzhana, what would be your recommendation to the future designers?
My recommendation would be that I think all the designers have to at least try to work with biomaterials and collaborate with material makers and other designers. I think that's the only way to actually improve these materials, to make them really, to make them be used. And for that, I think it's a great inspiration place. And to get contact is MATERFAD, actually. I was very inspired when I visited your library in Barcelona. And I would recommend also to contact with Anastasia Pistofidou, because she's also a great expert, knowing many biomaterials. She's a co-founder of Fab Textiles and Fabricademy. So this I would recommend. And to be creative and to create things.
Thank you, Surzhana. And Ryu, what would be your recommendations to future designers?
Okay, my recommendation for the future designers, I think we have to we try to dedicate on sustainable design for our lives and Earth, future people. So try to find out new biological materials and try to learn and use the digital technologies to reduce waste, to reduce unnecessary materials. So that's all.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much to the both of you for joining in this session. You're restoring my faith in design, my faith in humanity, and my faith in towards innovation. I want to thank all of you for joining into this wonderful session. And of course, please keep innovating, keep being positive, and keep researching in the fields of materials and sustainability, because our future depends on it, but also our present. Thank you very much, Surzhana. Thank you very much, Ryu, for joining us in this session of the Roundtable, and I wish you a very welcome day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.